right, everyone. Welcome to our February 2nd, 2026, 5 o'clock special meeting and board budget workshop. We will call our meeting to order at 4:59 p.m. We will establish quorum. We have Dr. Kristen Kraft, myself, Christy Schmidt, Rich Senna, Sarah Falkenberry, Dallas Pipes, Garrett Wilson, and Courtney Daughter Bruce, and Carlin Fryer. We're all spread out. We will head to closed session to discuss A, pursuant to Texas Code 551.071 and 551.129, consultation with legal counsel regarding the status of and contract for the Aquatics Learning Center project, including proposed change orders. So at 5 p.m., we will go ahead and head to closed session. All right, thanks everyone. We are back at open session at 6:03 p.m. Next, we have visitor comments and testimonials, in which we have no one signed up for tonight. Next, we have consider action, if any, regarding items discussed in closed session. Consider and take possible action regarding proposed change order for the Aquatics Learning Center.
I move that we proceed as discussed in closed session.
Motion from Courtney Daughter Bruce, second from Sarah Falkenberry. All in favor say aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Up next, we have our board candidate workshop, in which we also have no one attending this evening. So for the sake of the recording, we will put the board candidate workshop in the minutes for our meeting tonight. And then we have our budget workshop.
All right, let me click. Oh. So tonight we are officially kicking off the budget workshop series for the spring. We are going to cover these 3 items, and I'll get started before we hand it over to Mr. Scott. But I want you to think about all of our work over the past year and really where we landed after our community supported the election in November. So it was through this process all last year where this team was refining their priorities and studying what was happening in the legislative session, getting recommendations from our Budget Strategy Advisory Committee. And administration was going through a series of where can we find efficiencies? And, leading by examples by finding reductions at central office. And through the workshop series last year, you all landed at this competitive and strategic financial plan that then informed our budget development, which then also led us into our election in November. So I won't read all of these things, but these are the commitments. This is your vision of how you're going to address compensation and the needs of the district. Every year in our budget series, compensation for employees is at the top to make sure that we remain competitive. And so I'm just going to run through a few visuals that we put out in the fall, just as a reminder of the work that we've done to get to where we are today. So our election supported an additional $4.8 million by leveraging our remaining golden pennies, and you can see the vast majority of those dollars going to staff compensation. Here you see a great visual really indicating that 98% of the funds earmarked for staff increases were dedicated to those who directly impact students. And these dollars went into motion as soon as we had the results of the election. And so Jill and Wes's team worked very hard to put everything in motion. And here's a few examples that I wanted to highlight. So all these years we have wanted to do special education teacher stipends. We're able to do it because we built it into the plan for addressing compensation. So just as a reminder of the impact that this has on our employees, a special education teacher who's been with us 20 years. Last year, the salary was $61,854. With a successful election, this person's salary is at $70,400. Significant increases. we think about all of our employees. And so here we have some examples of auxiliary staff. So a custodian who's been with us for 12 years in 24-25 was earning $18.02 per hour. Post-election, the salary has now gone to $20 an hour. That means this employee is seeing just around $83 additional per month in the paycheck, which is about a $1,000 increase per year. When we consider our paraprofessionals, we have had many instances of principals struggling to fill their paraprofessional roles. And you heard from a number of our principals in November the impact these dollars are making for their paraprofessional staff. So here's an example of a paraprofessional who's been for 7 years. In 24-25, the person was earning $18.48 per hour, and the salary increased to $21.81 per hour. That is around $191 per month, just over $2,200 per year that our employees are seeing. And as you well know, providing a full range of special education stipends has been a goal for a long time, and the support of our Community for Local Control made that happen. And so our special education staff received their stipends as we implemented the strategic financial plan for our employees. And then we included additional stipends. And here's a listing of the additional stipends, touching CTE programs, early childhood, AP, dual credit teachers, and so forth. There's quite a robust plan of the dollars moving forward, and we're so appreciative of our community for support in this election.
Between the special ed and the additional stipends or the increased stipends, how many teachers are we talking about?
Jill may need a few minutes, but she'll figure that out.
I mean, I know it's a pretty big number. It's a pretty big number, yeah.
Yes, we'll get that number. And then just landing here before I turn it over to Mr. Scott, last spring we were navigating the legislative session. You all were in Austin advocating for Bernie ISD and for public education, and we can't thank you enough. At the end of the day, House Bill 2 came about, and we saw that the state earmarked dollars going to employees of certain levels. But when everything settled, you all remained committed to all of our employees. And so the gains from House Bill 2 were really earmarked for teachers starting at certain levels. But you all made a commitment that we wanted to treat our nurses, librarians, and instructional coaches to those same levels that our classroom teachers are.
You know, one thing I wanted to add, Dr. Kraft, was when I went up to testify in Austin on behalf of the teacher retention allotment before the Senate Education Committee, I believe just about all public school representatives, be they members of teacher unions or school board members, were advocating for an increase to the basic allotment. And we were unique in that we were focusing on the teacher retention allotment. And the difference is that if the X number of billions, I think it was $4 billion that went to the teacher retention allotment, if that had gone to the basic allotment, which we advocated for as well, what that would have done, that would have widened the gap between our funding per pupil and neighboring districts' funding per pupil, which means they would have been able to do even more for teachers than we would have been able to do. So as Dr. Kraft pointed out throughout the Vader campaign, our teachers with 2 or 5 years more experience got the same raise that everyone else did in our size category. The difference was we didn't fall further behind, and that would have happened if the approach had been implemented that the vast majority of school districts were advocating for. And that's just the simple truth. And we were unique in that. And I actually caught a lot of crap from some districts when I went up to Austin. Why are you doing that? I said, well, because we're tired of our teachers making less and being the only A-rated district in the area. So sorry if I don't agree with your approach, but we're taking care of our teachers.
In terms of our stipends, we added 132 special education stipends, and then 116 other stipends were either adjusted or added. So that included our CTE and some of our fine arts and dual credit, AP, all of those.
That was quick.
Thank you. So about 250. And so I wanted us to start there and just remember the huge effort that went into your vision and then the huge effort that led to a successful election, because our employees, every employee is seeing an increase to the bottom line.
Evening, everybody. This is a workshop where we would normally be talking about available revenues, but the demographic report's not going to come for a couple more weeks, so we're going to hold off for a month on that. And today we're just going to talk about the budget development time for 26-27. Of course, in January of 26, we started communicating what the timeline was to the executive leadership team and to others within the district. Of course, Friday, the comptroller released the preliminary value study. The district passed that study. Yay! It's only failed one time, I think, 2021, 22, if I remember correctly. So we were within the range that our values needed to be at to proceed with the property value study. And in January, our initiative package opened up for directors and principals to submit budget initiative packages for 26-27. In addition to the workshop in February, in a couple of weeks, the budget initiative package window will close. In a couple of weeks, we will receive the demographic report. Ms. Prune will at that point in time start working really hard on getting the campus staffing allocations published, and we'll start meeting with campuses about their staffing. And that'll lead us into March, and we'll start talking about available revenues, and we'll start talking about staffing projections and compensation scenarios publicly with the board at the March meeting. We'll also publish what the campus non-payroll allocations are going to be. That means we'll make the principals aware of what they'll have in their budgets outside of payroll. And then the executive leadership team will be discussing what kind of priority to assign to the budget initiative packages that have been submitted. In April, Ms. Flores will take the floor and talk about program initiatives related to the budget. And that is also a key time frame, because the appraisal district will start releasing preliminary values for the 26 tax year. And then in April, we'll finalize our priorities on all of the budget initiative packages to try to get a feel for what, to the extent that we have available revenues, those packages always exceed what we have available, and we'll determine what the administrative recommendation is going to be at that time, which will lead into May, when we'll get up and talk about what the overall budget picture will look like in that budget workshop. And then we'll also hopefully approve the compensation plan at the May meeting. That's when we generally try to do that. That'll lead up to June. If we need an additional workshop to complete the process, like we did last year with House Bill 2 and all the uncertainty associated with that, we did have a meeting that in June of 25, right? But if we need it in June of 26, we'll have it again. And then we're required by law to adopt a budget at the June board. There are a number of things that happen after that, right? Since we're a June year in, we get to find out what our certified values are after we adopt the budget in July, and then we'll find out for sure what our tax rate is in August, when it tells us what the minimum or the maximum compressed rate is at that point in time. We'll hold a hearing and adopt a tax rate either in August or September, and then all the way out in November, the appraisal districts will submit those values to the state, and we'll go through the property value study with comptroller all over. All right. That is the budget development timeline. That is the only slide I have today. If anybody has any questions or concerns about the timeline, before I pass that over to Ms. Pruitt.
So I just wanted to give you an overview of where we are with our employee benefits. Wanted to start with some of the statewide healthcare trends and challenges. And so we hear about this a lot, not just in education, but in multiple industries. But TASB has provided information that identifies some of the main reasons for rising healthcare are catastrophic claims, costly specialty drugs, also chronic health conditions, as well as increasing medical provider costs. The other piece that is challenging in terms of district decisions are the annual renewal cycles. So most most businesses outside of education have a January to December timeframe. We are on TRS Active Care, and so they have a September through August timeframe. But in terms of the renewal cycle, you have to notify TRS by December, but they don't publish their rates until May. And so if a district chooses to leave TRS Active Care, they are out of TRS Active Care for 5 years minimum. And so those decisions have to be taken to heart and not made very quickly without looking at significant data. One of the other things that TASB identified in terms of leaves of absences is the number of increased absences due to mental health issues, which has increased over 300% between 2017 and 2023. Bernie ISD, thank goodness, is not seeing that significant of an increase, but we have seen an increase in healthcare leaves of absences for mental health. One of the challenges that we have as a district is just in terms of our demographic. We have a lot of younger staff, and we have a lot of staff who are becoming older. As we've talked about before, about 20% of our staff is eligible to retire. And so in terms of our own healthcare costs, when I do just a kind of a cursory look at our data, we have a lot of babies being born, so you have a lot of healthcare costs related to pregnancy and childbirth, and then we have folks who are now experiencing some additional healthcare challenges as they've gotten older, and so we'll talk about kind of how that impacts us. But wanted to touch again, Dr. Kraft already mentioned the benefits that we've had with regard to the successful election, but prior to the election, we actually chose to increase the district contribution to healthcare premiums by $250,000. And then following the election, we were able to add an additional $500,000. So since July, the district has increased healthcare contributions by $750,000. And what that became was an increase for every employee who takes TRS Active Care of $720 a year. So pretty significant. So we actually, just some fast facts about our employee benefits. We have about 70% of our employees who opt into TRS Active Care. And when we think about contributions, I just looked at our employee only, really just to highlight, back in 2015-16, the district contributed $262 a month, and we are now contributing $395 a month. So that's about a 50% increase over that 10-year span. And so you'll see there that since 2015, TRS premiums have increased almost $2 million, but we've only passed on $215,000 of that to our employees. So Bernie has covered almost 88% of premium increases in those 10 years. So that's just really to try to keep costs down for our employees. This year, because of the increase that we were able to apply pre and post-election, 62.5% of our employees actually experienced a decline in their benefit costs. We had about 27 2.5% that experienced an increase, minimal increase of $23 a month or less, and then just a small number that had a little bit larger increase of $53 to $118. And so you can see the amount that is contributed to each employee group depending on the type of plan that they choose. And we are one of the few districts that actually differentiates the benefit contribution based on the plan chosen. Most districts will just do a straight benefit contribution, but you'll see the difference between our employee only and our employee family is $100 a month. So it's a $1,200 a year more for those that are supporting their families.
Yeah, if I could add, being in the business, and most of my groups are between 2 and 15 employees. That's the world I live in. This is unheard of to have 62.5% of your people see a decline in their rates, or over a 10-year period have 88% of the cost increase be covered. That is unheard of in the United States of America. When this started, I remember we got some information from, I don't know if it was TASB or from the teacher advocacy group, Texas Professional Educators, whatever their name is. Yeah, we were in like the 43rd percentile of contributions, and that wasn't very good because most of the districts in the state are small, under 1,000 kids. So to be in that low rated, now we're in probably the upper third, or upper quarter. So, from a benefits perspective, it's been expensive. You can see $1.8 million of increased cost. But we need to know that because, you'll see stuff on social media. Oh, my paycheck. What? No. We've covered a lot of the increase.
So this is just kind of a visual representation of the contribution that the district makes compared to the employee out-of-pocket expense. What you'll notice is we did have a decline in premiums in the 22-23 school year, and the reason for that is because TRS Active Care went to Blue Cross Blue Shield, and when major medical providers are trying to get business, they drop prices way down. And so you saw a significant decline, and now they've started to creep up. And so what you see there in the last 3 years was a 9% increase, and then a 14% and a 10% increase. And so that does align pretty closely with industry norms. It's actually slightly less than industry norms. But again, we were able to increase contributions by $60 a month or $720 a year for all of our plans. And TRS only requires that contribution to be $225 a month. So we are significantly higher than the state required contribution by employers. And so that $225 a month, just to note, that hasn't changed in well over a decade. And so the district has maintained its support of teachers and other employees of trying to offset more of those costs. Wanted to just mention a few things because we do get a lot of questions on why the district doesn't look at self-insuring. Just because we do have increases that we don't have control over with TRS Active Care. And so I just get it from a really high level, give you a perspective. So first of all, we've got some legal and statutory requirements. What that basically says is we have to follow the guidelines with respect to remaining in or exiting TRS Active Care. It also means we have to comply with COBRA continuation and ACA standards. And so those are all things that we would have to consider if we went to self-insurance. There's a cost and financial impact of going to self-insurance because there are significant administrative costs. We don't have a large enough team to be able to manage that ourselves, and so we would have to outsource, so then we would be paying the administrative cost. Also in terms of risk and claims exposure. As I mentioned, we have a younger population of staff and we have an older population. And so when we think about our rates being absorbed within all of Region 20, we're not taking on that risk of catastrophic losses because of premature babies or because of significant healthcare costs. That's being distributed across the region. So while we are seeing increases, our risk exposure is actually limited because of that being spread across the region. And then in terms of benefit and coverage levels, we are required to, if you are self-insured, you are required to maintain coverage levels that are at least equal to the minimum that TRS provides. So we couldn't reduce our coverage levels. We would have to maintain that same level of coverage. In terms, I mentioned our administrative capacity. My team is very small. There are 9 of us. And so typically, you know, in order to be self-funded, if you're not going to outsource that, you need to have an entire team that can manage all of those pieces. In terms of, I talked about the timing and transition logistics with the, you have to tell TRS that you're leaving by December, but you don't know what's going to happen with the premiums until May. And if you do leave, you're out for 5 years. And so you really have to ensure that you're making the best decision, because we don't want to make a decision and then realize we've made a mistake and end up costing a lot for the district. And then in terms of long-term sustainability, we're trying to be more strategic in our processes, but we don't know what people's health outlook looks like. You know, you can have a couple of catastrophic claims that really impact a district if they're self-funded or even level funded or fully insured, that are going to impact premiums. And so as I look at all of our information, just as I'm not an insurance professional, so our new provider is actually going to do a full risk assessment for us, just to be able to tell us with some certainty, if we were to ever consider leaving, what could that look like for us? At this point, we feel like TRS Active Care is the best option for our employees, mainly based on just the level of risk that we, as a small district, we can't assume that much risk for our school district. And then just
Jill, quick question. Wow. Quick question. Is there I'm sure there's not a magic number because it depends on the age distribution of your group, but is there a magic number of 1,000 or 1,200 employees or 1,500 that where it makes sense to become self-insured?
You know, I can't tell you that for sure, because in talking with my prior district was a large district, and my last year that I was there, we had a $4 million deficit because our stop loss wasn't large enough. I know Dr. Kraft has heard from multiple districts that are kind of all a variety of sizes that are going back to TRS because they're experiencing multi-million-dollar losses that they're having to make up in terms of budget deficits. And so I think it will be really important for us to have a full risk analysis with actuaries who can look at our data. When I look at our specialty prescription drug coverage and some of our significant claims, they're multi-million dollars worth of claims. And so I think it's important that we have that risk assessment done so that we can have really informed conversations with staff and with other folks who ask those questions. But I don't know that there's a magic number. Right. It's just, I think it really just we have to look at what does our claims data look like in the last couple of years and make an assessment based on where our claims data is. And right now, just on a cursory look, we have a lot less risk staying with TRS Active Care.
Remind me what we're paying right now in our TRS, our matching, the premiums. It just round numbers.
So this is, in terms of, so we don't match premiums, but we offset. So you can see any of our employee-only plans are $395, and they increase depending on the plan. Those are monthly, and you can see the annual amounts that we're applying toward our healthcare premiums for our employees.
So if the average there is like
5,000.
5,000, maybe 5,200 times 975 employees, that's 5-6 million roughly that we're, so basically if we had that amount or more in claims as self-insured, we'd be upside down. Is that kind of the math you're looking at when you
Yes.
decide to?
Yeah, when I looked at it, when I look at our claims in the last couple of years, we just had like our top 100 claims and they were over 6 million. So, yeah, it's it adds up very quickly, you know, when you think about, you know, a cancer diagnosis, when somebody's going through all of that, that can easily be $500,000. A premature baby can be easily $300,000, $400,000 if they have to spend any time in the NICU. So that it adds up really quickly. And so if we were to ever consider it, one of the most important things would be to look at a efficient stop loss to make sure that we didn't end up with an amount that we couldn't cover.
I appreciate the extra help for the employee plus family. I know that we're a family district, and yes, 495. You know, we're a family district where we want to portray that, and we want to help the families as much as we can. Am I right in remembering there's about 15 employee plus family, 15 to 20? How many? There's 70 employee family.
Yeah, so we do have this. One of the things that we'll see a lot, because we do have a lot of employees where both the husband and the wife work in the district, and so it actually is cheaper a lot of times for one of them, for if it's just a husband and a wife without children, for them to each do employee only. It actually is cheaper for them in a lot of cases. And if they have children, a lot of times what we'll see is they'll do employee only or employee and children. And so what we typically see with employee family is where we have one individual who's working and maybe the other person is not, or the one person that's taking the insurance. We have better benefits than maybe the spouse's coverage can provide. So we don't have as many employee family because of that, but we do have a lot of, dual families where both spouses work for the school district. They just split it up a little differently.
Okay. And I know your team did a ton of work after the election on making sure that every employee understood every benefit they were receiving from the district. So I'm assuming, I haven't seen what that looked like, but would that have included these insurance
It did.
contributions as well?
So when we created the compensation notice, it not only included the compensation, which was their base salary plus any stipends that they were receiving, but it also did break down whether or not they were receiving any benefits from TRS, from our employee contribution. And so all of our employees get a benefit from our EAP program, which is our assistance program that provides some benefits in terms of counseling and things like that. So all employees get access to that. And then the district also does provide a $20,000 life insurance policy. So all employees saw that. And then any employee that takes TRS Active Care also saw their benefit contribution on their compensation notice.
Kind of answered what I was going to ask, but as far as communicating, I think it's wise of us just to maybe highlight again to the employees just the coverage of the premiums increases over the last 10 years, kind of what that's looked like. I just think that's such a great story to tell. So employees that are taking or not taking, I still think it's a great story to tell these fast facts.
I think you're absolutely right, Courtney, because people don't realize it. They just don't realize it. And, Christy, you asked a question before. Roughly, I think it's like 63% of enrollees are employee only. About another 27% is employee kids, which kind of goes with some of those numbers up there. And I think it's like 7% family, 8%. So it's only very few, it's employee and spouse. And people say, well, why don't you do more for employee family? Well, in light of the fact that almost 2/3 of our employees that enroll, it's just the employee, at some point you got to say, well, how much more do we give to a family, and is that fair to an employee who's single? So it's a decision we have to make as a district of how far we go in that direction.
I think one of the other things that we want to look at, because we only have about 70% of our employees who take insurance, is really trying to understand what about that other 30%. And so we'll be doing some things this year during open enrollment to really explore. We know a lot of families that we have are prior military or active military, and so they do have other coverage, but just trying to really understand what's happening with that other 30% and how do we ensure that we're able to provide them the support they need.
I've got a question. Whenever you have a employee that is spouse and spouse in the same, within the district, I take it they're going to use one policy, but so they forgo kind of their benefit for one spouse. Is that correct?
It is actually more costly for them to go employee spouse, even though they would potentially have two different deductibles. They benefit more from employee only. So we do have an option to do a combined policy where they can pool. It's basically a pooled policy, but it's still more cost effective a lot of times for them to go employee only, or like if it's a family, do employee only and employee children. So we actually we're just talking with our new broker about that as well, just trying to make sure that we're doing what's best for our employees. Whoops. Somehow this got all a little off. So then just the last thing, at our last board meeting, you all approved us our new benefits broker, which is the Baldwin Group. And so just wanted to provide just an overview. We've had our first meeting with them last week. We'll be meeting with them again this week, and then we'll be meeting with them regularly between now and our open enrollment period. One of the things I shared is we're very excited to work with them. They very much are, their key word has really been customizable. And so really being able to help us look at what do our employees need and want in terms of their coverage, and how do we do that in the most cost-effective way. And kind of when we met with them, we talked about the fact that if we've got plans that our employees like and we can maintain the coverage, the premiums on those, why do we need to change and do something different? And so really being able to work closely with them. We will have, everybody will have to enroll this year. It will not be a passive enrollment because it is a new provider. But as I mentioned before, one of our biggest concerns in terms of just identifying a provider was really identifying somebody that was not commission based, because we don't ever want to have somebody that's encouraging people to purchase products because they're getting more commission on it. And so Baldwin is a salary based, and so we feel like that is a great benefit for our employees. And just they've already, when we met with them, they basically asked us to get our claims data, and they have a full actuarial team that's going to be able to look at our claims data and do a full analysis on TRS Active Care as well as all of our other benefits. So we're excited to work with them. And that's all I have for benefits. Are there any questions?
And the Baldwin Group is supplemental, such as health, such as dental, eye.
Yes, it's all of our supplemental policies. When we do open enrollment, they actually will their program will allow us to register for TRS Active Care, but they will be looking at all of our supplemental policies. So that's health or a dental, vision, critical illness, life insurance, accident policies, it's our EAP if we decide to maintain that or look at something a little different. It involves like employee paid life insurance, so all of those different things we'll be looking at.
And remind me what the contract looks like for that. I know it was in our consent agenda.
So it's we do a 3-year, just because when they go out to bid for our policies, we want them to be able to bid for at least 2 years, if not 3 years. And if we are only doing a year to year, it's a little bit more difficult to have them get better prices for us. So it's a 3-year with 4 1-year renewable terms if we feel like they're doing a good job for us at the end of that 3rd year.
One question. Any employee costs for benefits is done on a pre-tax basis, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if somebody spends $200 a month on their benefits and they're in the 15% income tax bracket, they're saving $30 a month of income taxes.
Unless they ask for those to be post-tax, because you have a choice of doing pre or post. And we do have a couple of employees that will identify post-tax, and that's always an option.
Okay, because, I mean,
It defaults to pre-tax.
this is really getting in the weeds, but it's not a bad idea to remind employees that whatever their costs are is done on a pre-tax basis with an estimated tax savings. Because I know, well, this is what shows up on my check. Yes, your premium shows up on your check, but your income tax withholding is less. So it's a nice thing to remind them.
Good thought.
Any other discussion? All right, thank you. Thank you, Jill. Dr. Kraft, do you have anything else before we adjourn? So, it's that time, it's that season. All right, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Rich Senna, second by Garrett Wilson.